Hello, I'm Chris Lee of Southeastern 14 here to do SEC Baseball Power Rankings as we head to the last weekend of the regular season before the SEC tournament. We will start from the bottom and go up from there, counting down to number one. Before that, a reminder, we are brought to you by BetOnline, your number one source for all your summer sports this season. From MLB, golf, the NBA, and NHL playoffs, all the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device to get in on all the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. We start at the bottom where Missouri has returned to number 14. I think I had the Tigers out of that spot for a week or two, but the Auburn-Missouri series, even though Auburn is 6-21 and Missouri 8-19, Auburn, I think, a better team overall, has played a brutal schedule. Auburn, the number 13 team, by the way, edges Missouri out at 13, Missouri being 14. Even though Missouri is 8-19, Auburn scored 32 runs against Missouri pitching this weekend. Ike Irish, Cooper McMurray, the guys that usually hit for them did. So Auburn wins the series, and I'm going to settle it that way despite Missouri having the better record. All right, moving on to number 12. And some people can argue that I should move this team higher, especially after this weekend where Ole Miss really pulled maybe the surprise of the SEC by taking 2 of 3 from A&M, and not just the surprising element wasn't just winning the series, is the way that Ole Miss did it with pitching. I've got Ole Miss at 12. I would say this. There's about 5 teams in front of Ole Miss, 4 or 5, that are kind of in the same group. I would argue, all the computers would argue, that Ole Miss is the bottom team of this group. And by the way, 2 games out of a 50-something game season doesn't count for everything. All that to say, Ole Miss is a good team. Ole Miss has now got itself in the conversation for the NCAA tournament. All that to say, if you're wondering why I didn't move Ole Miss up more after this week, I don't do it just like that. I don't do it just what you did this weekend. But Ole Miss, this team is maybe found something with pitching, possibly. Be nice to see. Josh Mallett's had a good weekend. Mason Nichols, I think, had a good start. If you're Ole Miss, you really needed to get 2 out of 3 this weekend against A&M. They did that. RPI firmly in range of getting a regional bid if Ole Miss can take care of the rest. So the Ole Miss Rebels, the number 12 team, but they did a lot to close the gap between them and the teams in front of them. All right, this is how tough the SEC is. Number 11, Florida. Florida outscored Kentucky this weekend, I believe, 26-19, but lost the series because you got to finish out all the games. Pitching was there one game. Caglione had another good start. You saw 2 tremendous plays in right field by Hayden Yost, but at the end of the day, the Gators lose 2 out of 3 against Kentucky. And frankly, Florida's been a horrible midweek team a lot of the year, although that's straightened out lately as Florida's got I think a 4 or 5 game midweek losing streak. So that's helped Florida get in range of the NCAA tournament conversation where they are, but the Gators going to need to do some work this weekend and probably in Hoover too if they're going to feel really good about their NCAA tournament chances. All right, number 10, LSU. Team's better than their record. I don't know that there's a team in this league better than its conference record than LSU at 10-17. And LSU really needed to get that series win against Alabama this weekend. It did not do that. It lost 2 of 3. But again, very close series. Continue to really like what LSU is getting out of its pitching. Breaks just did not go the Tigers' way. They stay in the 10 spot. All right, Vandy at 9. I believe I had Vandy at 10 last week. The Commodores lost the series to Tennessee this weekend, but, boy, the pitching really showed up. Their starting pitching was terrific. Devin Futrell, who's been their midweek guy a lot of the times, closed out of the bullpen. He looked great. J.D. Thompson looked really good. Carter Holton looked good. This is a team that, if it can get healthy, look out because the arms are there. Bats don't scare anybody, but Vanderbilt is capable of pitching well enough to contend with just about anybody. And that series with Tennessee just, went Tennessee's way, but could have gone either way. And I think that's a testament to maybe what Vanderbilt's putting together here at the end of the season. We'll see. then the offense might undermine all of it, and then their offense isn't very good. But we'll see what happens. I thought it was an interesting weekend to watch that series. All right, number 8, Alabama, a team that I wanted to see Ben Hess step up and give them a really good start. Boy, did he do it. He was a big reason they won the LSU series this weekend. The bullpen pitched a little better. You wanted to see that too. Alabama's top half of that lineup is pretty scary, tough to pitch to. If Alabama just gets a little bit more pitching out of guys other than maybe Greg Ferrone and some people like that, Bama's got a chance to do some things. You saw what that looked like this weekend. Alabama at number 8, which I think is a spot higher than it was last week. All right, South Carolina at 7. I think that's the same spot we had the Gamecocks in last weekend, but some of the teams right in front of and right behind the Gamecocks lost. Carolina got bludgeoned by Georgia. There's nothing pretty about it in their own ballpark, and I'm sure that has caused some gloom and doom in Columbia. But look at the way Georgia is playing right now. We'll get to the Bulldogs in just a minute. They are bombing anybody and everybody. And sometimes you just have a bad weekend and a bad matchup for whatever reason. That was a bad matchup for the Gamecocks. But I leave them there at number 7, which, by the way, if you just ranked the teams in terms of conference win-loss record, that's exactly where Carolina settles. Good reason for me to put them there as well. All right, number 6, this might have been the easiest team I had to rank. That's Mississippi State. Feels like State's been in this range for a bit. Felt like this was a better team than it was getting credit for early on. I think that has come to fruition. State at the number 6 spot. Yes, State lost a series this weekend to Arkansas in Fayetteville. Guess what? A lot of teams do that. Did not change my opinion of this team one way or the other. In fact, I think hanging with Arkansas and Fayetteville gave me even a little bit more respect for Mississippi State, even if it did not win the series. I'm leaving State at number 6 this week. All right, number 5. I think now I've had a top 4 for a while, and I've got Georgia at 5, but I think you could justify Georgia in the top 5. Now this is a top 5 with Georgia in it, with Mississippi State kind of in its own tier at 6. But I think Georgia, instead of maybe a 4 elite teams, I think maybe it's a 5 elite team discussion, with Georgia being part of that. Now, Georgia's got the worst record of all these teams, and I rank Georgia at 5th in the SEC, but worst SEC record, I should say, for that, because it's not just a what have you done for me lately, but my goodness, the Bulldogs can flat out hit. I think they got home runs from maybe 7 different guys this week. Leighton Finley was good again. Georgia's won, I believe, 8 games in a row. I don't know if that's in the league or overall, but either case, Georgia has just been a force to be reckoned with. Nobody can pitch to Charlie Condon and these guys at this point. Corey Collins, one of the more underrated players in the league. Georgia at 5 and a very deserving number 5, if not higher. All right, this is how close it is at the top. I've had A&M in the number 1 spot for at least 2 or 3 weeks. I still feel like this is probably the most complete team in the SEC, but you got to pay attention to results. And I didn't think A&M was going to go in Oxford and lose, and not only lose, but the bats just didn't show up for the most part. So because it is close among the teams in front of A&M, I moved A&M down 4. But I think if you reset everything, this might be your national champion. But because the other teams have done a little bit more on the whole, I moved A&M down. I did not see that loss to Ole Miss coming. I just didn't think there was much chance. But on the road in the SEC, that is life when every other team has got some talent too. So I moved A&M down 3 spots to 4. But, hey, we could do this again in a week, and A&M might be number 1 again. Arkansas at 3. I put Arkansas 3 behind the next team by virtue of some other things that I'll get to without spoiling it. But the Razorbacks, I'm a little concerned that they're not getting more out of the 2 and 3 spots. Those guys did not go very long this weekend. Of course, A&M's bullpen is good, or A&M. Arkansas's bullpen is good enough. A&M's is too, by the way, to really get you out of a mess that your starters have caused. But I did not think that Brady Tigert and Mason Molina would have the weekends they've had the last couple of weekends. So that hurts me with Arkansas a little bit. I thought that rotation, that 3-man rotation, was just as consistent as anybody's. And look, it still may be. It is the SEC. Everybody at this point has had a bad weekend against somebody somewhere. So I moved Arkansas at the 3, and I've still got Kentucky at 2. Kentucky is team that beat Arkansas a couple weekends ago, also the team with the best record in the SEC at 20-7, number 1 RPI team in the country. The Wildcats weren't great at Florida. Again, got outscored this weekend, but won the series. I feel like kind of by default, Kentucky had to be number 2. You could argue maybe that that's somebody else, but that's the way I put it. Number 1 in the rankings, Tennessee this week. Tennessee number 1 in all the polls. They were number 2 in my power rankings a week ago, but I said it was close, and so Tennessee went to Vandy, won a series. A&M went to Oxford, lost a series. Vols now 19-8 in the league. A&M 17-10. And by the way, I've said that I've kind of separated these two teams based on completeness. I thought that A&M's pitching's better, and I still think it is probably, but I'm not sure. You could put Drew Beam and Ryan Prager on a scale, and it could come out the same. I think Prager's a little better. I think the numbers would bear that out right now, but it's close. Evan Aschenbach, A&M's best reliever. Tennessee's kind of got one of those in Nate Snead, who was really instrumental this weekend. Defense, I've talked about defense, but I watched this team this weekend, and it's probably a little better than I thought. They got some athleticism out there. It's not just a slow-pitch softball team. Kavaris Tears and Wright's a nice defensive player. Their shortstop, Dean Curley, who's a freshman, has got some giftedness as a defender. This is not a team, don't get me wrong. This is not a team that's going to just wow you with the defense compared to the Bats, but it's not a liability either. I think Tennessee right now, I don't think that this is going to sound like a contradiction. I think Tennessee is the clear number 1 right now. I don't think the difference between the Vols and the other 4 teams is that great. And I think that says a lot about the league and the top heaviness at the top. But I think right now, with A&M losing that series, kind of hard not to put Tennessee in the 1 spot. I think most people would agree with that, and that's what we did. All right, we will be back next week to recap more SEC baseball. We'll have recaps after the weekends. We're going to do a live stream, maybe 2 this weekend. We're going to name all SEC teams. We're going to have all kinds of baseball content coming to you before Hoover, during Hoover, after Hoover, into the NCAA tournament. Best way to get that, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching. I'm Chris Lee. We are Southeastern 14, presented by Bet Online.